Hey everybody, it's Lance, and this week on Weekly Grind, I'll be answering a couple questions from our friend Randy, who's a Kansas City Chiefs fan. First question from Randy. If the Chiefs fail to reach the Super Bowl again, is this Alex Smith's last season as a starting quarterback? No, and I'm going to tell you why. Alex Smith is what he is. He's frustrating to watch. He's a dink and dunk guy. He's a game manager, the notorious nickname that he's definitely earned, with the occasional breakout game where he'll play well beyond his abilities, and then the following game, reality will be brought back to us. What he does, though, on a consistent basis is probably why he's still starting in this league, is he always makes the safe throw. Well, for the most part, makes the safe throw. Oftentimes won't hurt your team too much with his turnovers if he has them. This past season was probably the first time in a while where he's throwing crucial interceptions in the end zone that really hampered the drive, where if we get any points in those drives, we win those games. But that's okay. Hopefully that's not a thing to come, because if it is, we're going to start losing a lot more games if he can't make those decisions better. A few of the things mechanically that he does that really aggravates me is he likes to run from ghost pressure. Ghost pressure to me is what you are standing in the pocket and you imagine pressure coming, but there's none actually coming. So, naturally you would want to stay in the pocket. But what he'll do is he'll scramble out so the opposite direction that he feels the pressure's coming, or he'll get happy feet and he'll just overthrow or just completely miss his targets, or he'll just prematurely start running. Well, yeah, he's a pretty athletic dude. He can make some plays with his legs. Certainly shouldn't be doing it every time that he feels that kind of pressure, and I feel like that's his first response, is scrambling. And then when he decides to look up on the rare occasion, then he seems to be panicky, and then he makes bad decisions, whether he turns it over or he just throws a horrible pass. So a lot of fans I know, if you just even looking at any of the social media, you can tell they just want to replace Alex Smith. But when I ask that question, with who, most of the time the options don't add up, or they simply just don't know. They just want a new quarterback, which I'm not opposed to change either. But I want to make sure that the change we're making is a good change. And I don't believe that any of this year's quarterbacks are ready to start day one, maybe not even year two of their career. I'm going to name off the top 5 quarterbacks probably are more familiar with anyway. First one being Trubisky, Kaiser, followed by Kaiser, then followed by Mahomes, followed by Watson, followed by Webb. Those are probably the 5 quarterbacks you're the most familiar with. Funny thing about this year is, though, there doesn't seem to be a clear-cut number one guy. So Trubisky, for the longest time, was said to be the go-to franchise guy. But now you hear reports now, and they're like, maybe not. Watson's the guy, which, not even 2-3 weeks ago, Watson was mocked to go to Kansas City at 27, but now he's going to be the first pick. There's some inconsistencies there. And I think it's really hard for people because they realize that these quarterbacks coming out are just not ready to be NFL quarterbacks. They're going to take time. They're going to have to sit a year or two behind the quarterbacks. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I think Alex Smith will still be a quarterback come day one. It's because none of these quarterbacks coming out in this draft, unless we find a veteran, which to me makes no sense unless it's going to be Bray to replace Alex Smith. I know a lot of people will want Tony Romo for some reason, but even if he did come here, he'd have to learn an entirely new offense that he's not familiar with. So they're going to have growing pains, and do you really think we're going to go further with an injury-prone quarterback who, even behind Dallas's amazing O-line, is just going to light it up behind the Chiefs O-line? A questionable run game? I don't think so. But those are my reasons why I don't believe Alex Smith will be replaced in the next year. Maybe the second year, possibly. But even that's questionable at best. And really, it's just going to depend on what we do in the drafts. If we go quarterback within the first, I wouldn't even say the first 2 or 3 rounds, anytime during the draft, because I think Chad Kelly's the guy I really like. But he's certainly not going to be a top 2 or 3 round pick. And everyone that seems to go after 4 or after the 3rd round, they seem to kind of be an afterthought, that they're just assume they're going to be, backup quarterback. But that's my response to your first question. Okay, and now move on to your second question, Randy. Since Herman Edwards installed the 3-4 defense, the Chiefs have failed to pressure opposing quarterbacks, putting tons of pressure on the defensive backs. They get away with it against opponents with average quarterbacks, but end up sitting ducks versus good quarterbacks. How did the Chiefs address that? Well, I went ahead and I did a little bit of research on the last 6 seasons of how many teams out of the 72 teams that made the playoffs, how many teams actually used the 3-4 defense. And the numbers are kind of surprising a little bit, at least, because I thought 3-4 defense would dominate it. 38 teams out of the 72 ran a 3-4 defense. Playoff teams that ran a 4-3 defense with 34. However, the difference was how many Super Bowl winners ran a 3-4 defense. 4 out of the last 6. have ran a 3-4 defense. What does that mean? Pretty much nothing. Typically, because New England wins anyway most of the time. Really, I mean, it's proven the 3-4 defense works, but you just have to have the right pieces. I wouldn't even say pressure has been our issue, because the past 2 seasons pressure has been an issue, but what's been the biggest piece missing has been Justin Houston. When Justin Houston was on the field, we were near the tops in terms of quarterback pressures on a pretty consistent basis. Like, our defense was really good. We've always been kind of weak against the run, which we need to address that anyway, and I think some extra linebacker help would work with that. But we're always lacking something. Either we can stop the run, but not the pass, or we can stop the pass, but not the run. Or like this year, we couldn't stop either one, and I attribute most of that to the injuries. But how do I see us fixing this problem? Well, really, it's just getting guys back healthy. Our front 7 was decimated with injuries early on into the season, before the big one being Derek Johnson that went out later in the season. But we lost Jay Howard, we lost Alan Bailey, we lost Maga before the season even started. Hawley was supposed to be a rotational player because Houston was supposed to at least be able to come back at some sort of a healthy shape, but he didn't end up doing that. He ended up coming back later in the season. His first game back was pretty terrible, and then his second game back he absolutely dominated, but he was a no-show for the rest of them. Like, he just wasn't a factor, and obviously his knee was an issue, and conditioning probably from all the rehab and everything for that ACL. But where's our biggest problem? It's literally on the D-line, in my opinion. I don't think our D-line does enough to eat up the blockers for the linebackers. We're consistently on one-on-one, and I know everyone's heard the term, if you're on, you got to beat your one-on-one matchups, like that's your job. We don't do that even on the D-line, and with the loss of Dontari Poe, I mean, we can call it a loss, but here's how I view it. So Dontari Poe, the past couple of seasons, has been super ineffective. If he had never sustained the back injury that he did, I think he'd be probably the best nose tackle in the game, and we'd be getting consistent pressure up the gut all the time as well. Chris Jones came on strong last year, and that was amazing for a rookie, so that means he's only going to get better. I think the guy that they replaced Poe with is going to do pretty good. He actually rated as the second best in terms of run stuffing percentage. That's a huge increase on what Poe was doing. Poe could eat up the double team, but he wasn't very effective against the run, and he wasn't good against the pass either. I mean, in terms of generating pressure, and I personally just blame it on his back, because we know he had the ability to do it because he used to do it all the time. And then our other 2 linemen, the 2 DNs, Jay Howard, he's probably the best out of him and Bailey in terms of pass rush. We missed him a lot. And then Bailey, he's our run stuffing guy, which is where I think our huge loss for the run stuffing ability was Alan Bailey, because most people don't understand, like, a guy that size, almost 300 pounds, but he can still have a 6-pack ab. The guy's an athletic freak, and he's super strong. He was a huge loss when he went down. He's one of the underrated guys. That's why he got the contract that he did when he got it. And then our linebackers, they don't play the run very well. At least this past season, they just looked bad out there. They were thinking more than reacting, which is never a good thing. And I think a lot of that had to do because the D-line just simply couldn't get it done because there was our depth, and then we were past our depth because our depth also got injured. In terms of how we're going to address that, you got to attack the trenches, man. I imagine we'll probably pull out a surprise pick. We'll grab some linemen somewhere. I know we just got Benny Logan from the Eagles, which was a huge addition. But we saw some guys show up like Reyes. He did pretty good last year. They didn't re-sign him or anything, so I'm guessing we'll probably address that in not free agency, but in the draft. Probably grab a couple of big bodies there to help plug in, help stop the run, and then hopefully generate some pass rush, because I think Chris Jones, as much as I'd like to see him as a starter, I think his best bet right now, at least until we get rid of Howard or Bailey, is being that rotational guy that needs to be that pass rush. So hopefully that's his role. But if there's more and he does exceed at it, then that's great. In terms of linebackers, I think Dee Ford came on really strong last year until he got his hamstring injury, which, for a speed guy like Ford, a hamstring injury is pretty bad. A guy like Call Lee, he doesn't rely so much on speed. He's a strong guy, and he's really good technique-wise, so that's where he makes his money, and that's why he's been so good for so long. Even last year, I think he led the team in quarterback pressures. Not to say that he was bad, but that's not a good thing. He only had 3.5 sacks, so we're lacking something across from him and in the middle, because the quarterbacks I know on a consistent basis could just step up into the pocket. I think our pass rush will get vastly improved once our guys get healthy and they can stay healthy, and then with Dee Ford getting another year of development. And I imagine we'll probably acquire somebody or not acquire somebody, but we'll get somebody via the NFL draft that will also be depth and help. We'll get guys like Zambo who literally can't generate any pressure, it seems like, off the field. And then also, you got to think about it. Our corners, like, yeah, we had Sean Smith, and then we had Marcus Peters as a rookie across from him, but those were the most notable corners we've ever had. Especially since we've been to the 3-4, we just have never had top corners. And I think Marcus Peters, obviously, we know how good he is. And then Mitchell came out of nowhere. Terrence Mitchell came out of nowhere last year. And I think he was probably like a practice squad guy or something. But he, according to PFF, rated extremely well against the pass. And then Steve Nelson and his development, once we got gains off that field, it seemed like everything started clicking for the secondary. And we got beast mode Eric Berry back there. Ron Parker's super solid. The dude needs to work on his hands. He'll make some of the most incredible interceptions, but that guy seriously drops like the easiest ones. It baffles me. Our secondary is where it needs to be, especially if Mitchell can play at the level that he did, because we know Peters is going to be a beast. If our secondary can play the way they ended it last year, and we can get healthy, I promise you, those sacks will start coming. We'll probably be, in terms of pressure percentage, we'll definitely be probably top 5. And I know for a fact the defense will be a top 5 defense, because even with all the injuries we had last year, we were still a top 10 defense, surprisingly, at least in terms of points per game, which is amazing, because I honestly thought it would be worse than that. But apparently we were legitimately the bend but don't break defense. We definitely have to improve that. And one of the things, like improving against the run, we have to improve against the run before we can even worry about the pass. Because Le'Veon Bell showed us, yeah, Pittsburgh was only held to field goals, but we could not stop their run all day or even all season. We couldn't stop anybody's run game all season. There was running backs who were having career days against us multiple times. Like, you just simply can't have that on defense. But a lot of it's creativity from Bob Sutton. You start adding all these new players in that don't know the defense as well. It kind of limits on what you can do because you're on a weekly basis installing something that was already installed for the defense that they knew, So in terms of that, I think that will be where the 3-4 and the pressure generates from is just the health of the guys. And, I can't tell you how excited I am to see the potential of this defense. We just never get them healthy enough to ever see it. But that's my opinion on the question that you asked about 3-4 defense, how we're going to generate more. On that note, that ends our episode today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or would like to just send me something you'd like to hear on the podcast, go to my website at www.weeklygridiron.com. You can get all my Facebook, Twitter, and email information from there. Take care.